She didn't lie. She was ignored. She was silenced. She was blamed. He didn't lie. He was ignored. He was humiliated. Because in some families, protecting the abuser is more important than protecting the child, the victim. Today, on Unpacking Me, we are breaking open the silence around sexual abuse in the shadows when silence protects the wrong people, especially in marginalized communities, especially in Caribbean families where things are swept under the rug and victims are told to forget, forgive, or shut up. This episode is not easy, but it is necessary. I am your host and trauma recovery therapist, Nikki Cameron.
And I am your co host and trauma recovery therapist, Murnell St. Jean. And welcome to another episode of
Unpacking Me, the parts of trauma no one talks about.
Yay.
So, on today's episode, we intend on having this necessary and uncomfortable conversation around silencing the victim who has experienced sexual abuse. And so, how is it that abuse stays hidden in plain sight, Murnell?
Well, a lot of the times it looks like there's grooming within the family or community.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's minimizing the situation and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like victim blaming,
Mm-hmm.
such as what were you wearing? Why didn't you scream? Or why didn't you say anything? And it looks like pressure to keep family secrets at times because it happens in the home. We don't talk about it. People don't need to know outside the house. And abuse often comes from somebody trusted, a cousin, uncle, stepfather, religious leader, an auntie,
Or your
or
brother's best friend, or your sister's best friend,
or your brother.
or the babysitter, or your father.
It's from pretty much
It could
anyone
be anyone.
who's close to you.
Right. The other aspect of it is normalizing it. It can sound like, well, Uncle so and so, he's always grabbing on people and touching on them. He's been doing that for years.
Oh my word.
And it can also look like denial. It didn't happen. There's no way. No. Are you sure?
That's a big one.
Are you sure that
That's a
happened?
big
Are you
one.
sure maybe his hand didn't just brush up against you,
That's a
or
big one.
maybe her hand just touched you inappropriately? Maybe she was trying to fix your clothes. Are you sure? You sure that happened? You know?
Is it even safe to say that at times it can also be cultural?
So I need you to break that down, Murnell.
I was talking to a friend of mine and
Mm-hmm.
she was telling me how a there was an experience where this man
Mm-hmm.
who was about her age, same culture as she, was telling her how he went on a date with a 14-year-old, but her parents approved. And so she was, and I said to her, trying to understand her culture,
Mm-hmm.
because she wasn't, I forgot where she was from. And she said, I said, how old was he? She was like, he's about our age, 35. And I said to her, I said, is that normal? Does that happen often? She was like, it's not talked about, but it happens.
And she is correct. Many states here in the US, as a matter of fact, has not outlawed marrying minors.
Minors, yeah.
Several states here in the in the US have not outlawed marrying minors. And so, especially in the Caribbean islands,
Mm-hmm.
many times older men married younger teenage girls. They were barely 13 or 14, and it was normalizing because it was so normalized. We don't see how odd that is for a grown man, grown ass man.
Because he's a grown ass man.
to be marrying a 12 or 13-year-old. And because it gets normalized for so long, it's not later on until let me use an example. Okay. When my grandparents were alive, my grandfather was about, I would say, maybe 10 years older than my grandmother. And for a long time, I really didn't think anything of it. We didn't think anything of it. And then one day we started having a conversation.
Numbers started
And then
coming out.
started tallying the numbers, and I was like, wait, hold on. So you mean to tell me she was 15
Lies.
when she
He's 10 years.
15.
He's 10 years.
15. And so at that time, I had to sit down with myself and say, okay, all right, okay, how do you even process this? And so multiple individuals around me were saying, you know, back then it was cultural. It was normal for older men to be in relationships with younger adolescent girls who were under 16.
Yeah.
Children. And it wasn't considered grooming. It wasn't considered abuse. And so I'm of the opinion that you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Until you know. It's so true. It's so true.
You don't know what you don't know, and now you know. So now you know. Now what? Now what?
I think that's the biggest part when it comes to it for that cultural aspect. Because like, now what? Now I know.
And listen, don't get me wrong. There cultures all over where this is normalized, and I'm not here to judge or knock anyone's culture.
No,
I'm just saying, when you think of development and you look at a 13 or a 12-year-old child, is what I'm going to call it, their brain development, our brains typically don't develop until we're 24, 25, right?
Yeah.
And so having the capacity to consent to getting married at age 12, age 13, for me, that's nil. Because your decisions are being made for you oftentimes by your parents to be in relationships with an adult. You don't necessarily get to engage in the decision making of engaging in those kinds of relationships, even if it's not getting married.
100% agree.
Right? Even if, and it's not just men, because I don't want to be biased. We're also talking about situations where more mature, older women are engaging in relationships with younger children,
It's
or
true.
even in same-sex relationships, because I don't want this to seem like it's just a heterosexual thing. We're gonna call it for what it is. This is not unique to heterosexual relationships, right?
I think it's in all relationships,
right,
across the board.
But I digress. I want to talk about or name the fact that it is never, ever, ever okay for the victim to be blamed.
100% agree.
Never, ever, ever okay for the victim to be blamed for being sexually assaulted, sexually molested. You call it what you will. It is never okay to put the blame on the victim, ever. Never. And so when we talk about culture, even naming that, there's cultural attitudes, religious attitudes, there's a role of patriarchy and purity culture, wherein if you're not staying a virgin until a certain age, then there's some parts of you that are flawed, or you're not acceptable before God, or if you have sex before marriage, you are looked down on. I hear that, I get it. And so oftentimes those beliefs are harmful as they're weaponized against victims
A lot of the time
are not given the opportunity to be heard or even have justice served.
Right.
So a lot of victims that I've even worked with do not want to move forward in speaking up or holding the perpetrator accountable,
right,
because they're fearful of how it contradicts church teachings that reinforce guilt and silence the victim, or unintentionally ends up being blaming of the victim. And then this belief of keeping the family together.
right.
I can't tell you how many hundreds of women I have worked with who walk around with this label of it's my fault. I can't tell you how many women and men, children, are walking around out there with this belief that them being sexually abused, sexually assaulted was somehow their fault.
Yeah.
And I just want to ensure that whoever is listening, whether you're a family member of the victim or you yourself were victimized, I need to ensure that I stress this for you. Silence does not protect, it punishes the victim. Silence does not protect, it punishes the victim. So, I want to share a personal story that I have, and it's nothing that I feel shame for. I would have wished that my first kiss was not from a stranger when I was the age of 3.
Stop.
I would have wished, I wish
Oh my.
that my first kiss
Oh my.
didn't come from a grown ass man.
Oh my.
And I didn't even know it was a kiss, because what do you know at that age? So I remember my mother, when we lived in the Caribbean, used to do cosmetology. And so people would come by and get their hair done. And so my mom was doing this guy's girlfriend's hair. And I was playing around playing.
Because you're 3.
I'm 3. I'm
right.
playing. At my house, I was playing because she had a shop. So I'm playing.
Connected, right.
Right. And so I don't even know. I just remember it being dark, and I remember sitting down, and I remember this grown ass man sitting next to me. And the next thing I know, his tongue was in my throat. And I remember, I still today can see the vision of it.
Wow.
Disgusting.
Oh my God.
And I think at that time, because I didn't understand what was happening to me, I just remembered that I felt horrified by it. I had no understanding of what was happening. And because I didn't understand what happened to me, I couldn't put it into words to explain to my mother or anybody else, because I didn't understand.
You're 3.
And unfortunately, that continued to affect me.
Wow.
Where for a long time I was disgusted by a kiss. It just grossed me out.
Yeah.
But never did I
associate
the two. And this was way before I even went into the mental health field. And I remember in working on it in therapy, the realization that I was in shock, and that shock stayed stuck in my body.
Wow.
From age 3.
Wow.
So God forbid if I'm on a date and someone tried to kiss me. Oh my God.
And the fight system comes
Instant
up.
fight
Instant
response
fight.
would come on.
Yeah.
I felt like death. Like, how dare
you?
So something that was meant to be intimate for me was taken away from me.
That is a powerful story. And the reason why, because as I'm listening to it, in our culture, I'm Haitian, so we have a very, it's a very patriarchy culture, but it's a very respectful culture, if that makes sense. So children are expected, oh my gosh, to walk into a room and to go and kiss every single person on the cheek that is an elder to them. And so I remember one day being well trained as I am, people came in the room, even if it's a teenager, I still have to kiss you because you're older than me. And this man turned his face.
We're laughing, but it's not funny.
A kiss on my lips.
Oh my God.
My mother, thank God, saw the whole thing. You should have seen her face. She turned, if my mother could turn red, she would have turned red. And I was just like, disgusted.
Right.
But then I think about it, and ever since then, my mother said, you don't have to say hi to anybody. Just shake their hand.
And I'm happy that your mother respected
she was like,
you enough and honored, was intentional about protecting you and saying, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Many victims don't
Don't
get
have
that.
that.
If anything, they get blamed. And so, going back to me talking about the shock that I experienced as a little girl, so many victims, when they're put in situations where their boundaries, their sexual boundaries are being crossed, physical boundary is being crossed, right, by others, our bodies respond in survival strategies, and that survival strategy can look like a fight response. So when that jerk did what he did to
What?
me,
Sure.
I could have fought. I could have probably fought. My little 3-year-old hands could have probably fought.
And you could have punched him.
There are many things my body could have automatically done to protect me, but we humans don't dictate
Which version?
how our system responds when it feels threatened,
Right.
because that is a natural, innate, organic response. So I didn't get to dictate the frozen response that kicked in. I was frozen. I was in shock. And so for a while, I blamed myself. As I got older and I understood what happened to me,
Mm-hmm.
I started blaming myself. I shouldn't have been playing out there.
Mm.
Why was I sitting on the chair, the steps? I should have been next to my mother. I should have. So I started to use my adult brain
Mm-hmm.
to judge the
behavior
behaviors of
of
my
the child.
3-year-old self, which was so unfair.
That's so unsafe.
And then it wasn't until I started to understand that what actually happened, I like to view it as an act of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I froze. So when he did that to me, mentally, I checked out. My body was here and I wasn't able to protect my body, but my mind left
Mm-hmm.
disconnected in order to keep me sane.
Mm.
So for me, I reframed it as my act of resistance to protect myself. And I literally had to work on not internalizing his shame. He's the one that should have been
He
ashamed.
was nasty.
He is the one that harmed me, violated me. And so I was very intentional about asking myself, who should be ashamed for this?
Mm-hmm.
Me
Mm-hmm.
or this person?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't my shame to carry.
It wasn't.
I somehow held on to what he did as shame on me
Mm-hmm.
because it was kept quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never my shame to bear. I did not do anything to cause me harm.
No.
He did. And sometimes as victims, because we don't understand our body's stress response, mine was freeze response. It could have been fight. It could have been flight where I could have ran away. And I think I eventually went, once I came out of the freeze response, I ran, right? But it's important to understand what is happening to your body. Start with the biology before we jump into judging, because I was using my adult brain to judge my childhood experience, and that wasn't fair. So now when I work with victims of sexual abuse, one of the things I'm very intentional about is ensuring that they understand the biology behind this, the neuroscience behind it, and how the stress response shows up in order to protect them in situations like that. Right. So that they're not blaming themselves for situations that they had no control over, because that blame does not belong to you, the victim. It does not belong to the victim. It belongs to the perpetrator.
And I want to name something that I see that's very prominent within our culture right now, at least within the millennial realm of things. And with social media, you get to expose to so much. And there's this culture that I notice even on the TikTok where people will have like their babies. Children are innocent. They're babies, they're young. And if you smile at a baby smiles back at you.
Oh,
Often,
not always,
not
but
always, but if you are very, they smile back at you. And so I've noticed that nowadays there've been this experience of, oh, he's flirting with her, and it's a 1-year old or a 3-year old. How is a 1-year old or a
yeah,
3-year old
listen,
flirting?
I just
Because it's and so they would make videos and say, "Oh, look, he's a flirter. Oh, he's such a little." No, he's a child. And if you smile, often he's just a nice child, a jolly person. He's gonna smile back. That's not a flirt. That's a child doing child things.
so we tend to, as adults, reframe children's innocent behaviors.
Yes. You took the words right out my mouth.
Innocent behaviors. Children's brain develop from the bottom up. The front part of our brains, which is the prefrontal cortex, where we make judgment calls and rationalize things, it's not fully developed again until we're about 25, between 25 and 26.
Mm-hmm.
Some research will say 24. And so to expect that a child is exercising judgment of an adult with certain behaviors, children mirror and mimic what they see. Baby do what baby sees. Children do what they see. We learn by seeing and adapting as children and mirroring. And so I would encourage people to educate themselves. If people would only spend time learning about their bodies and their brains and understanding things and not just making assumption or going by what they see on TV or and generalizing it in a harmful way to victims of sexual abuse, we wouldn't be in this place to begin with.
Yes, I 100% agree.
And this tendency to normalize these behaviors and protect the perpetrators, the offenders, and bypass the victim's needs is so harmful. And people end up developing mental health issues and medical issues that if someone, their community, their family, even law enforcement sometimes can often re-traumatize the victims, would have spoken for them so they can have justice. Right. A lot of the suffering that victims go through would not have to be happening. There's just this whole culture. I mean, how many times you see things going on in the news and they say, well, it's because she wanted his money. It's because he wanted the money.
They always seem to find a way to
blame the victim.
And make the victim
it's
look like
unacceptable.
The bad guy. It's very unacceptable.
So what does it look like, unprocessed sexual trauma in adulthood? Well, like I said to you, for me, with that instance, I was disgusted by kissing. It was just this gross thing for me. Yeah. Because my brain associated kissing with shock, kissing with helplessness and fear. I literally had to work my ass off because it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be fair for my partner to be right. And even though, listen, even though we'll come across partners who are very understanding and supportive and nurturing, I didn't want that to be my narrative, that I was avoiding this intimate experience. And for me, I think sex is, or lovemaking is so spiritual that I didn't want to be robbing myself of that experience because of this thing that had been done to me. My autonomy, my ability to say no was taken away from me before I even understood what it meant to have boundaries. And so it looks like difficulty with trust. So after that, I did not trust being around any grown ass man, especially in the dark. And it affected me in terms of my ability to connect through kissing, right? The shock in my body, it was there. It was still there. So it can look like over sexualization. Some children, unfortunately, or some victims, when they're sexualized, when they're sexually assaulted or abused, they might start acting out sexually after the incident, or they just don't want to engage with sex at all.
I hear that quite often. Or they become somebody else when they are engaging in sex.
Yes.
And so I've heard all three, if not more. I just become another person, even though I don't want to have sex. It just happens. I just turn it on. Right. And then I turn it off when it's done.
Right.
And so it becomes this like almost what's the word I'm looking for? When you don't want to do something but you're trained to do it.
Sexual fawning.
Right. It becomes sexual fawning. So that's a huge one too that a lot of people don't realize actually happens.
Yes. So this sexual fawning thing, I am engaging in sexual act with the other party. It doesn't necessarily have to be the abuser or the perpetrator.
Be your partner.
I am engaging in this sexual act with this person and I don't want to, but it becomes similar to people pleasing.
Yes.
I'm doing it because I want to avoid the potential consequences of it. And many people don't realize that that's what they're doing.
Yes.
Or it might look like, in order for me to engage in sex, I have to be intoxicated.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's always because of sexual trauma. What I'm saying is, in instances of sexual trauma, it can look like that.
Yeah.
I have to be intoxicated. It can look like reenactment.
Yes.
Meaning, I'm looking for similar dynamic of the one I had with the person who sexually harmed me.
Yes.
So if I had an uncle or an aunt who would molest me at certain times, or an older person who did that to me, I tend to gravitate to similar dynamics.
Yes.
And I'm reenacting it because our brains like to process things to completion. And if we never got a chance to finish whatever response needed to be processed at that time, we tend to reenact the dynamic unconsciously. So I've had people come in, and from time to time I've worked with individuals who don't even realize they're doing it. This person in the family or a family friend would molest them all the time, and now they're in adult relationships where, when we take a look at the dynamic, they're realizing that they're unconsciously reenacting it.
Yeah.
It feels very similar. It feels the dominance, the control, the power around it, and they end up reinforcing their feelings of worthlessness.
Yes. And one of the things that I run into is I work with a lot of male.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of men, and what I oftentimes run into over sexualization with them,
Okay.
and also sex addiction.
Okay.
And in almost, if not all, the men I have had an experience to an opportunity to assist, all of it comes back to that one moment where my auntie or somebody else did this to me, and now, and without realizing it, because it's normal for men to just supposedly for men to have sex and do all of that stuff and be sexualized at an early age, they don't realize this over sexualization or this sex addiction that I have is due to that sexual trauma that showed up for me at a young age.
The biggest hypocrisy I see is the tendency to normalize and cheer on and tell young men or boys how proud we are of them when they are engaged in sexual activity with older woman. Right? It's, wow, you got your first girlfriend at so and so an age. Ooh, that woman is attracted to you. It's abuse.
It's uncomfortable.
it is not okay.
It's humiliating.
And so what happens is the victim themselves, because they tend to get, like, how do I go tell my dad
that this older woman
or older man
touched
me
inappropriately,
when my dad has been telling me, hey, when are you gonna make your first hit? When are you gonna,
it's so sad.
It is sad. And so there's bias around it as well, because you don't want that to happen to your daughter. But your son,
you're okay with it.
You're okay with your 16-year-old son being in a relationship with a 20, 30, or 40-year-old woman and thinking it's cool.
It's cool.
Or your friend or your nephew that you know, and you think that's cool. You're giving them high five for that.
And that's not okay.
We have men come in here.
That's not okay.
Who are so ashamed.
And hurt.
And eventually start using sex to numb the pain that goes along
with the experience.
Right. And so it's important, though, to note that your body will always remember what your family wants you to forget. Your body will always remember what others shame you for and want you to forget. And one of the worst things that could happen to a victim of sexual abuse or sexual assault is to go to your family or friends and tell them what happened, and hear them making excuses or dismissing it or downplaying it. That is so harmful. And I just want people to understand that the validity of your truth does not depend on who believes you.
Yeah, say that again.
The validity of your truth does not depend on who believes you.
True.
You are the one that went through it. Your body remembers it and will always remember it. And whether or not your parents, the police, your friends, or anyone else believes you does not invalidate your reality, your truth. And it is important for you to remember and reclaim your agency by affirming to yourself, it was not my fault. It was not my fault. And making space to name what happened to you, because that is so powerful. So powerful to name what has happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found therapeutically, and I recommend to people, you have therapy techniques such as EMDR was very helpful for me. It stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And that's something that you can do with a trained therapist who specializes in trauma work. There's also IFS, or internal family systems, or somatic experiencing. And there's inner child work. All those modalities are very effective in helping victims to process unprocessed sexual trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also grounding techniques that you can use for your body to help your system to start to learn to reconnect your brain and your body, your sense of self to your body. And telling the truth is not betrayal, silence is.
Go.
The other piece of it is I want you to really, you are listeners, whether you are the victim or
You know a
you have,
victim.
yeah, you know a victim, maybe it's your son, maybe it's your daughter, maybe it's a family member or a friend, maybe it's you yourself. Start with compassion, start with kindness, start with listening, not making assumptions, not forcing anything, and radically be present for that person, 100% present. Don't add on to their story or try to take away from it or minimize it or deny it. Just hold space for that person and ask how you can be of support to them. Because when you are an individual that has experienced this terrible, horrifying thing, then unfortunately, it impacts how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you view others, how you feel in your body. And then nothing feels safe anymore. Nowhere feels safe anymore. And safety then has to be redefined. So let's start right now. I want you to think of a safe place. Maybe it's the beach. For some people, it's being in their bed. For some people, it's just being in a park. Or maybe you don't have such a place. Maybe visualizing a safe person, or maybe it's a pet. And place your hand on your heart and then repeat after me. I believe myself.
I believe myself.
I honor my pain.
I honor my pain.
I believe myself
I believe myself.
and I honor my pain.
And I honor my pain.
So I'm going to leave you with this journal prompt. What did silence teach you about your worth? What did silence teach you about your worth? If you're holding on to any painful experience around sexual abuse, what did it teach you about your worth? And as you even think of the experience itself, just the thought, where in your body are you still carrying the story you have been forced to swallow? Where in your body are you still carrying the story that you were forced to swallow? There are resources that are available to support individuals who have experienced sexual trauma. And so I would encourage you to access directories such as Therapy for Black Girls, Psychology Today, or depending on where you are, your local directory. Google wherever you are for a local therapist that can help you. We here at Emergent Counseling Consulting, we also have a specialty in working with victims of sexual trauma. We're located in the Fort Lauderdale area. Unfortunately, we are at this time only licensed to practice in Florida. But nevertheless, I would encourage you to give yourself the supportive, non judgmental space that you deserve. There are also spaces that I've mentioned before, like adult children of dysfunctional families and alcoholics, or the wildfire allowance. There's also RAINN, RAINN, which is also another resource for victims of sexual abuse or sexual trauma. And I would encourage you. And is therapy the only way to heal? No. However, if you find that yoga isn't working, or you consulting with your elders, healing elders isn't working, or whatever it is that you've gone on retreats and that wasn't enough, then perhaps it's time to see a therapist whose specialty is in working with sexual trauma. Every therapist doesn't specialize in working with sexual trauma, so it is important that whoever you decide to work with, that you confirm that they know how to support victims of sexual assault or sexual trauma. And as I said previously, therapies such as EMDR, IFS, somatic experiencing, and inner child work have been very effective. Another technique that I often recommend is journaling. I tell my, survivors, I say to them, get a journal or a sheet of paper and draw that part of you that has been silenced, that was abused, that was harmed, and sit with that version of you in a quiet space and have a conversation and show up with curiosity and compassion. This sounds easier than it actually is to do, because if you've been judged or silenced, you yourself might be judging or silencing the part of you that has been suffering. So sometimes it's hard to do this by yourself, but if you are able to show up with kindness and compassion and curiosity to nurture this part of you and validate this part of you that is blaming self, that's a good place to start. So again, I want you to remember that you get to hold on to your truth, believe yourself, and know that the validity of your truth does not depend on who believes you.
Awesome. And as we're closing, I would like to remind us that you are not alone, you are not to blame, and your healing matters. Again, I would like to remind everyone out there, all of our survivors, all of us dealing with this heavy experience, that you are not alone, you are not to blame, and your healing matters. And I would also like to invite everyone listening to share this episode with somebody who you think needs to hear this information, and share it if you feel like it's safe for them. And if anything, we would love to hear you guys' stories. You guys can always DM us. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we have this podcast, all under Emergent Counseling.
Mhm.
And we would love to hear from you guys. We would love to interact with you guys and support you guys in any way that we possibly can, to the best of our abilities, in sharing these resources. There's a lot of that on our website. We have a lot of articles that you guys could read that can support you guys as well. And our next episode
Well,
is coming
before we
up.
even talk about our next episode, I just
Awesome.
feel moved to say something,
Mhm.
because I feel like it's important for people to know this. You being around the person that harmed you sexually was not the problem. That was never the problem. You being around them, you hanging out with them, you trusting them, that was never the problem. That is not the problem. The problem was that they took your trust and violated it. The problem was not you trusting the offender, the ones you know. Sometimes we just don't know who the perpetrator is.
Yeah.
But in instances when you know them, and even when you don't know them, you walking down the street and it was not the issue. What you were wearing was not the problem. You being in a certain place at a certain time was not the problem. You hugging the person was not the problem. You sitting next to them was not the issue.
Or even saying hi.
Or going on a date with them.
Yes.
That was not the problem. The problem was that when you extended your trust to this person, they violated it. That is the problem. That is what was wrong, that your trust was violated by this other human being. And I need you to give yourself permission to blame them, blame their behavior, not you. That's all I want to share. Transfer the blame that doesn't belong to you. Transfer the shame that doesn't belong to you. It was never yours to begin with. It is never okay for the victim to be blamed for somebody else's harmful, degrading, humiliating behavior.
Selfish. And so I encourage you guys to share this. Again, this is a very powerful episode. So share it with those who you guys think needs to hear it. And help us to reach these survivors who live in silence so that they can begin to have a voice and begin to share and begin to come out of it, because this is something that we overcome through support, community, and
Kindness
to self.
Yes. And so for our next episode, we will be talking about the cost of toughing it out. So I hope that you will join us for our next episode, where we will be exploring how pushing through has been costing us our health. So join us for the real cost of pushing it through. Until then, this is your host, Nikki Cameron.
Co-host, Marnell St. Jean.
And until next time, be kind to yourselves because you deserve
it.
it.